Hello, amazing moms, and welcome to Parenting Powerhouse, the podcast that's here to transform your parenting journey into a powerhouse of love, understanding, and success. I'm your host, Tara Travell, and I'm thrilled to be your guide through the incredible adventure of raising neurodiverse children. As a seasoned teacher specializing in ADHD and autism, my mission is to help individuals with unique abilities not just navigate, but thrive in their social worlds, at home, in school, in their careers, and within personal relationships at any time in their life. But that's not all. I am a dedicated parent coach, committed to reducing burnout and dispelling the feelings of loneliness and failure that can sometimes come with the extraordinary task of raising a child with special needs. Moms, I get it. I am also a parent of neurodivergent people. The journey may feel overwhelming at times, but believe me, you're not alone. This podcast is your sanctuary. A place where you'll find direction, support, and strategies to not only survive, but truly flourish. My obsession is empowering moms like you, and I'm here to be your accountability partner, guiding you towards creating a loving relationship with yourself, your child, and everyone in your household. Thanks so much for pushing play. So buckle up for heartwarming stories, expert insights, and practical advice that will empower you to embrace the uniqueness of your family and build a life filled with love and joy. Get ready to embark on a journey where you're not just a mom, you're a parenting powerhouse. Let's make every moment count together. Don't forget to follow so that you never miss an amazing episode that just might connect with your unique situation. Welcome back to Parenting Powerhouse. I'm your host, Tara Travell, and today I'm thrilled to introduce our guest host, Maria Slavin. Maria is not only an occupational therapist deeply passionate about social emotional learning, but she's also a dedicated mother, navigating the unique challenges and triumphs of raising neurodivergent children. Through her own experiences and expertise, Maria offers invaluable insights and support to fellow moms on this journey. She's also made a remarkable pivot in her career, founding the business Exceptional Moms, where she serves as a parent coach. You can find a link to her website in the description below. Join us as we delve into the world of parenting with neurodiversity, guided by Maria's wisdom and compassion. Hi, Maria.
Hi, Tara.
It's so nice to see you. I'm so glad you came out.
Thank you for having me. It's great to see you again.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's been a long time. And I have to tell our moms why this episode is particularly special to me. Because we are in the same business. Basically, we parallel each other pretty well. Mm-hmm. We both started around 2013-ish, like you say, 2013-ish, and we were working with kids and families, teaching social emotional learning, along with, you're coming from an OT background, me from a teaching background.
Right.
And we got together because we were introduced by people in our social circles doing things. So back then. And then with, I guess, the pandemic, there was a little bit of a hiatus you and I kind of took. And I didn't see you around for a little while. Yeah. And when I looked you up again, I noticed that you pivoted into another type of business, which is the parent coaching. And honestly, around that same time, I was thinking of doing the same thing and just started on my own. So I thought it was kind of cool that we just kind of paralleled each other and going through some of the same things, some of the same passions.
Yes.
Very cool. So I'm really excited to have you here today to find out, what has, kind of caused you to get into the parent coaching.
Yes.
Because it might be similar to me, of course. Mm-hmm. But it's fun because we're both doing pretty much the same thing. And I think that's really, really important for moms out there to know that even if somebody's doing something similar, we can just continue that. I mean, there's a need for everybody's different personality and approach and everything else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's just really encouraging to see, and like you said, we're parallel, but if you bump into another mom or female who's doing what you want to do and they're a bit ahead of you, it gives you encouragement and confidence that it can be done. So yeah, it's so nice when women work together instead of, feeling competitive or anything like that.
Yes, exactly. That's huge. Yeah. You said it. I think women, when we come together, we are the most powerful group, really.
Mhm.
I think we can be.
Yes.
As long as we are uplifting each other, and
Right.
it's so easy to do. And to be honest with you, you're here to share with me some things and our listeners, and I'm going to have so many takeaways, I know it already, to guide me in my own.
Aww.
So thank you, Maria.
You're so sweet. But also, like you said, there's not that many, there's actually not enough of us with what we in particular do. People out there advocating for feel your emotions. What is somebody else feeling? How do we take each other's perspectives? All these things are the basis of all the relationships, but there's not a whole lot of emphasis on that in the world. And so, yes, we need more people caring and, advocating and putting emphasis on these things in all people's lives, in all children's lives and adults.
Definitely. So those moms listening, this may give a push, and we'd be all for that.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Awesome. So I really want to find out a bit about your story and what got you here to the parent coaching side.
Mm-hmm.
And the first question I have for you is, how did you recognize the need for self-care and regulation in parenting? And what inspired you to turn your experiences into a business to help other moms?
So there's sort of two answers to that. One is because of running a small business and being a therapist and always working on emotional intelligence and social emotional learning and self-regulation, I thought about, wouldn't it be interesting to apply these same principles to people at work, in the workplace, and how do you run a business and what is going on with emotional intelligence and relationships in that space, and how it's just obviously important everywhere. But that's what initially got me interested in coaching. And I remember reading Daniel Goleman, who is not the first one to coin the term emotional intelligence in business or in the corporate world, organizational psychology. Somebody else did, but Daniel Goleman is the one that really sort of brought it to the forefront with an article he wrote in a newspaper and wrote a book back in the early 90s. So I was reading his work and I was like, wow, these principles he's writing about are basically the same principles that I'm always working on with the kids, right? Which you wouldn't think at first, especially neurodivergent kids, right? But it really was an aha moment, like, yeah, these are things everybody needs. So that was how I got interested in coaching. And so I sat on it for a few years because, I have 3 kids and life was busy. When I finally decided this is it, I'm going to do a coaching certification, and I was looking at programs, I discovered a dual program, a life and executive coaching certification, which wasn't my plan, right? And some of the good things never are. And through that process, by the time I had come out of that, I was feeling more focused on relationships and managing emotions, self-regulation, tying in the OT background, not so much in the workplace anymore, although I am still interested in that, but more so just in personal relationships. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where I've come to in my career, right? OT-based social skills groups, to now life coaching, and I have the executive coaching cert. Relationships are everywhere in every part of our lives, every setting. At home, if you have a partner, what's that relationship like? You're parenting kids, whether they're neurotypical or neurodivergent, what's that relationship like? You go to work, if you work, or you work from home, what are those relationships like, right? It's all relationships. That really, the success of those relationships very much determines the quality of our lives. It's not all of it, of course, health, and there are other things, having our basic needs met. But if those things are covered, the rest is really so much about relationships. And so looking at it through that lens, I just think that all humans need to be thinking about how they feel. Do they even acknowledge how they feel? Do they recognize how they feel? Are they paying attention to how the other person feels? Perspective taking, all the things that you and I have worked on with the kids for years are just as important for everyone. So that led me to, why don't I take that desire to work with adults on these things and combine it with my OT experience and background coaching children and focus on the mothers of these kids, right? And so it's not just about their parenting, it's them as an individual, right? As a human being, because nobody really gives that to them. It's all about the kids all the time. And then what is the parenting piece like at home? Because you are so stressed out. And if we're trying to teach our kids self-regulation at home and taking them to therapists like ourselves, if we as mothers and dads, parents, aren't doing our best to be regulated in the home when we're interacting with them, it's almost going to cancel each other out, because it's so important that the parents are modeling that and giving that to the kids in co-regulation too, which we can talk about. But it's just that's how I, all these thoughts, like, yes, this makes sense to me.
I love it. It does totally make sense, especially when you say relationship. We don't think about that so much. We are so caught up in the day-to-day, like you said, getting our kids taken care of, therapists, doing what we can, and we just run ourselves like dry. And when we think about it, it is about relationship. If we can just remember that term, I'm just thinking out loud. Thinking about relationship. If I could just put that in my mind, a little bit, and see it that way. That's like a great first step, maybe.
Yeah. And even more so, what I'm trying to do with these women too, and which nobody really is told as little kids growing up, is the relationship you have with yourself is, you hear it from time to time, but people tend to not really take it seriously. And it is the foundation, your attachment with your parents, right? And the way emotions are expressed, and those interactions are huge. And the other piece is then the way you feel about yourself. Which those two things go hand in hand, as we know from attachment theory and all the research and psychology. But so if you are someone who is carrying a wound from childhood, which many, many people are, right? And you're not aware of it, or you sort of know it's there, but you don't like to feel those emotions. You don't like to, a lot of people, it's just too hard for them. It's too raw. So they bury it, as we know, but it's there, and it's going to affect you and how you show up in your other relationships until it's healed. So that back to yourself, I would say, really is the starting point for anybody listening who's like, wow, I'm not thinking about these things, but yet I know there is a negative impact in my life, so I guess I should be thinking about it. Start with yourself. Yeah.
And that's great. I love that advice, because I think that's kind of where I'm going with my parent coaching business, is starting with self. I did put some strategies, 3 strategies up on my website, 3 strategies, like, here, click and get these 3 strategies. And I start out with that. First, you have to start out with yourself. You wake up right away, and this is what I started doing, and maybe it'll help others, maybe it won't, but I would say today is a fantastic day. And I'd look in the mirror and say, I love you. And you know what? It felt so strange and weird at first. And I didn't believe it. I didn't believe these things. But you know what? Now it's just becoming easier. And honestly, I think I feel a little more calm when I start my day. I mean, of course, then things happen and get out of control. But it's just that start. Even if I have 5 minutes of peace with myself, it's a start. So I think that's really important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's the hardest seems to be the hardest thing for people, just to tell themselves that they love themselves, or be their own friend, be their own cheerleader. So it's really important. And if that feels so not just awkward, because it would be awkward for any of us, right?
Definitely.
But I've seen other people recommend the mirror, that, you know, saying
oh,
it.
Really?
And, yeah.
I just started doing it like
and
a month ago.
Mel Robbins, who is, I don't know, do you know who Mel Robbins is?
I know the name.
Yeah.
There are a few different Robbins.
She has a very popular podcast, self-improvement. She wrote books called The High Five, where you give yourself a high five in the mirror, right? The high five habit.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of research and things behind doing that. So it's just very important. So, but it feels weird to people. And again, if you're carrying those wounds and you doubt yourself, or you're walking around feeling like you're not good enough, then you really struggle to be your own cheerleader, be kind to yourself. So, you know, I would, again, just say focus on that part first.
Definitely. I love it. So, okay, let's pivot a little bit. And I want to get a little bit personal, if that's okay. And I want to know if you can share a specific moment or turning point in your journey where you realized that your experiences could be valuable to other moms in this way.
Yes. So I have 2 children of my own who have ADHD diagnoses, and I have ADHD, which I didn't discover until later in life. But like many women, it's like, oh, okay, that's why I run around like a crazy, that's why I run around like a crazy person doing too many things and all of that. But I think my ADHD and my sensitivity to sound in relation to just getting older, I'm in my 40s, I've noticed about myself how much noise can bother me, get me triggered, dysregulated, if you will. So that was one of the things I started noticing around my house. And all kids make noise, right? But ADHD kids may be a bit more, you know, loud or a lot more movement, right? So I think I was cooking dinner, and I had experienced this many times where I noticed I was saying to the kids, like, would you please just go in a different room, you know, because maybe 2 were fighting, and one had his lightsaber and he's making his noises and he's adorable and he's just doing his thing. But all of that together with any other background noise, like a TV, it made me feel so dysregulated. And I noticed it and I thought, wow, look how much this is getting me worked up. And I'm a therapist, but I'm not perfect by far, you know, and when you step into your mom zone, you're in that realm, you're human. So you're going to make mistakes, right? Of course, that's a given. But it just made me think, if I sort of do this for a living, work with children on emotions, and I'm this dysregulated because of the noise, what are these other mothers who are raising neurodivergent kids, and all kids? I think it's, you know, the more I talk about these things, I think so many of them apply to all parenting. Yet, if you have a neurodivergent child, you're going to have like a maximization in certain areas, right? You're going to have all kids make noise. You might have a child that screams often, those kind of things. But it just made me think, I can't be the only one who is stressed out by the environment, the sounds, really the sensory piece, right? Which, as an OT, I've called it sensory processing for years, but I really prefer the term self-regulation now, which is more than just what's coming in from the environment. But it just made me think, I bet these moms are not thinking about how this piece plays into their own ability to be calm and parent their kids. And that was an aha moment of how I could kind of bring this all together.
Interesting. And, you know, like you said, this was happening all the time. So it was like, okay. And then finally it was like that aha moment, like,
yeah,
you know, and that's how it happens, right? I mean, we don't really plan or prepare for it.
Yes.
We just.
Yeah. And it was also really interesting to think about the kids I've worked with for years and how coaching them on how to cope with these things, you know, sensitivity to sound, being overwhelmed by too many people being around, the kids that get dysregulated when they're having lunch or they go to an assembly, to experience those feelings from a sensory level, heightened senses that were getting me very triggered. that was really interesting too. And like, wow, it really is hard. It really is hard. Not that I ever doubted it was hard, but to feel it, how overwhelming it can be, was also an aha moment.
Isn't that interesting? And the fact that you bring that up, it's like, okay, so we teach these skills to kids, and we've been doing it for a long time, many years. Honestly, looking back and looking over the years, I've learned so much, like from myself. Like I think I do take my own advice when I can. I do like to try things out. I like to put myself in these positions where I need to utilize the skills that I'm trying to teach my kids.
Yeah.
Because I don't really feel good about it unless I have kind of experienced it, you know?
Yeah.
And then I can, you know, better articulate it to them and better, you know, maybe get into their shoes.
Yes.
Yes. To help them even better. But it happens like I'm teaching myself. Do you feel like that? Like,
yeah.
All these years?
Yes. And the kids are teaching us,
and
right?
Kids constantly.
Yes. It's awesome. It's cyclical, and yeah, for sure. And I always think, so what you were just saying, to your point, of being like working on these things that we're teaching, making sure that we're doing it too in our own lives in whatever way that makes sense, like taking a social risk, for example, right?
Yep.
Things like that. There's a lot of parallels that we do work on with the kids that we can be doing too. And especially my work now with the moms, as I'm sitting there coaching them on self-care, on regulating their emotions, and all of those things, I'm often saying to myself, you're kind of a fraud if you don't work on this stuff too. And again, not perfect. I often then beat myself up a little bit. I think, you know, why aren't I better at this? But I do think about that to make sure I'm, you know, I guess walking the walk. You're going to talk the talk, walk the walk, right? Mm-hmm. And it's good because it comes back to you as doing it as your own person, how hard it can be. So that when you're in your therapist or coaching role, you can remember that too, that as a human being, like, yeah, it's really difficult to fit these things in, or it's really difficult to calm down after a hard day, and all the things we talk about. So it's good for us to be practicing what we preach.
Definitely. And you know, moms, Maria and I just had this conversation, and she is excellent at helping you through this because she just kind of really coached me for a few minutes before this and you know, it makes you think. So she definitely knows what she's doing. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
So let's talk about the coaching sessions a little bit. So in your coaching sessions, what are maybe a couple of common themes or struggles that you find that most moms are dealing with, and how do you address these issues?
So it's also interesting. While the mothers I have, their kids are of varying labels and ages and abilities within those labels. And there's even a couple that don't have labels yet, that they're in the middle of getting evaluations or haven't gone to that point yet, but they know there's at least something emotionally dysregulating about their child. There's a lot of meltdowns at home. There's a lot of flexibility issues. There's enough going on that they said, I would like to do this coaching. So while that's true, it's been beautiful just how much they relate to each other just as parents. And the biggest theme I think I see come up so far is fear. Fear, will my kid be okay? Which we all have as parents, right? And again, which I've sort of come to the conclusion or noticed in myself, and it's helping me adjust my self-regulation and behavior and interactions with my own kids, is when our kid does something that, whether it feels like they disappointed us or they just didn't do what they were supposed to, or they got in trouble at school, or they didn't get the grade they should have, that knee-jerk response we have of sort of like, you're not doing what you're supposed to, which can come out as sounding very blaming. And don't get me wrong, we have to discipline our children. We have to set boundaries, all of that. But what's underneath it, when we sort of lash out a little bit and it sounds kind of mean and like we're really disappointed in them, is the fear. It's coming from fear, which is really coming from love. Because if you take all the layers off the top, right? my kid's not getting good grades. Well, what does that mean? Oh, well, maybe he's not going to go to college. Oh, if he doesn't go to college, he's not going to be able to get a job. Oh, and then what if he doesn't find a wife? And then he's going to be sitting at home. He doesn't really have friends, and his whole life, it sounds crazy to say it out loud, right? But these are the thoughts in our heads. Mm-hmm. And I think all parents do that worst case scenario jumping, and under it is always fear. Are they going to be okay? So then you take the mother of a autistic child who maybe is right on the cusp of living independently and maybe not, and think about those feelings of, are they going to be okay? And what will it be like when I'm gone? And will he be able to get a normal job? Those kind of things. And that's just one example. But from that kind of situation with like a 19-year-old to a undiagnosed 9-year-old who doesn't have a label, where mom is just feeling like he's refusing to go to school. He's upset all the time at home. What's happening, and starting the evaluation process. It's still fear. It's fear.
It really is. I know you're completely right on that. Yeah, I see it all the time. And fear is really the driver, and because it's so strong, it's such a strong, like, negative feeling, that's hard to overcome.
Yes. I mean, we all have so much fear in our lives about all kinds of things. But when it comes to our kids, who we love so much, it's like the thought of your kid not being okay in whatever that means to you, that someday down the line, will they, I guess, be happy, healthy, hopefully have a job, or just at least be in a place where people are caring for them and taking care of them, and all of those things. It's so scary and heartbreaking. It's almost the worst feeling you could have, the thought of your kid not being okay. And that's what I think, that's where that fear comes from.
Definitely. And it stays alive because we feel alone a lot of times as parents. Mm-hmm. Even though there are other parents dealing with similar situations, we are kind of alone because we haven't connected with these parents. And that's what's so important about, like, the coaching and the coaching groups. Yes. Is then we can find our tribe and find people to uplift us and, talk about the positive things as we're going through it. So we're not just focused on the challenges and struggles.
Absolutely. And that has been beautiful too, as far as like a theme of not a struggle. Well, I do think it's a struggle outside of the group, because I will say to the ladies, when's the last time you saw your friends, right? Part of your self-regulation in general is you being social. You need human interaction too, outside of your home, outside of your kids. And many of them say, either I don't really have many friends in the area or in general, or like my sister's my best friend, but she lives far away. Or I have friends, but I just haven't seen them in forever. I don't know the last time. So I'm trying to remind them too that that's important. And so that's one piece, to give them that coaching on. You need to make that a priority. You might think that sounds like, I'll never have time to go out with my friends when I'm raising a child that has needs and I have other kids, but it's something everybody should make time for in the realm of self-care and self-regulation. So that's a theme too, that the moms aren't getting enough social time, or me time, fun time. But, me time, a lot of people think about is when I got my nails done. And that's all fine and good. That's great. You should have me time for whatever makes you feel good. But that human connection, we are wired, we're wired to connect with other people. We're biologically designed to be part of a group. So the fact that I can help them open their eyes to that and see that, it will make them better parents. Even though going out and having an afternoon with your girlfriends, lunch, whatever, isn't about your child in those couple hours, but you're going to be in a better mood because you got that. And not just for the day. I think when you have that every couple weeks, whatever you can manage. So that piece, and then just the camaraderie and support and sisterhood that's developing, like you said, within the group, because they're really getting to be friends. They're really I love when I can sit back and they start coaching each other, because they're at different levels, because their kids are at different ages. And the mother of an older child can say, I remember going through that. Here's what I did. It's just lovely. It's just, I couldn't be happier with how it's turning out, like for them and for me to get to be part of it and see it. So, yeah, it's really cool. But I think those are the other themes, the fear and the lack of connection that moms in general, so many are isolated, and they need it.
They are. And I think that, like you said, take some time. And a lot of times moms feel guilty about taking that time. So we need to put that guilt aside because, like you said, when we do, engage in these things and make ourselves feel better, even if it's just for an hour, we get out for an hour, that may last quite some time. It could last another hour, could last 2 days. Yeah. But then we're better for our kids because we feel a little bit better. We've just kind of up-leveled our emotional regulation.
Yes.
And so, we're better for them.
Yeah. It gives you a break from the stress of what you're always dealing with, right? To switch up the environment, just to not be in that space and not be wearing your parenting hat. Plus, then if you see people that you love or care about or have fun with, then you're filling your cup even more. So it's like you get a break and then you get connection. You're going to come back rejuvenated.
Exactly. And that's what's needed, even if it's not too often.
Right.
Anytime is good, right?
Right.
Anything.
Let's
see. So I think we've covered some of my questions. So I'm going to try to pull in something that we haven't really talked about. But balancing parenting and entrepreneurship, unique challenge, right? I mean, we both know we're doing it constantly, right?
Yeah.
Well, how do you manage your time and energy effectively? And what advice do you have for other moms pursuing their own businesses or side gigs?
Oh, well, managing time effectively is not my strong suit, as I was almost a half an hour late.
Hey, that's why I had to ask you, because I listen to both, so I just want to hear from you. I want to hear your story to make me feel better.
Well, my answer to everything that I struggle with is growth mindset, which again is a concept in psychology and behavior, and you'll hear it in schools, and we've taught it to kids, which is don't have a fixed mindset. It's the opposite of a fixed mindset for the things that don't come easy, or challenges or even failures, to not say, I'm just not good at that. I just don't do that, or that's just how I am. Rather look at it as, this is harder for me. And in my case, our case, the ADHD, like your executive functioning is impacted. So time management and organization is harder. I used to think I could just get away with not really caring about that piece, right? Because it bored me, right? Which is another ADHD thing. We thrive on the things that are interesting to us. But now I know how important it is, right? You can only outrun it for so long, especially if you have kids and you're running a business. But when I screw up, which I do often, I just say to myself, you are so much better than you used to be, right? Which is also just so important to the whole thing of don't compare yourself to others, right? What do they say? Comparison is the thief of joy, right? Compare yourself to yourself where you were. So I will just kind of, give myself a little compassion, and then the growth mindset is you can get better. You are better than you were, and it may still be, it's always going to be harder for you than other people in that realm of the time and the organization, but keep going. And then I try to apply that to almost anything that is hard for me too, which entrepreneurship and having one business and taking it in another direction, all the things. I think it's grit. You keep going. You find a way that when you're feeling unsure and looking at the things that you're not doing as well as you could, to balance, to make sure you're able to look at what you are doing well and give yourself some compassion and keep going. Don't stop. Even when you have a little period of time where you're really, really doubting, don't give up.
Yeah, definitely. And what comes to mind is what I use with my teenagers, more so my young adults, when I'm teaching them social communication skills, self-awareness, stuff like that, is I often hear even parents say, and the kids will say, well, I always hear I take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And I said, okay, let's look at it a little differently, because we don't take a step back. Actually, we don't. We take 2 steps forward. We were already there, so we can't go backwards, but we are maybe taking a side step.
Right.
So it's like, oh, we're going forward 2 times, but something else came in the way, is in the way, and we're taking a side step to take care of that, to be able to get back on track and move forward.
Yes.
So that's kind of how I look at it. Like, don't look at it as a step back.
Right.
We can't go there.
Right. Or like
positive
also,
mindset.
Right. Growth mindset, positive thinking, but allowing yourself to feel, it's okay to feel defeated. Everybody makes mistakes. And when I say keep going, don't give up, that's if you want to, right? And if we're talking, depends on what we're talking about. Some things in life we have to do, right? If we're talking about entrepreneurship or a business or any risk in a career to go after a passion, if you start it and you're really struggling and you just feel like this actually isn't working, I'm doing more harm than good, but I feel like I can't stop because I told everybody I'm doing this, then it's okay. I was just listening to a podcast last night about quitting and how quitting is okay, how the word quit is so negative in our society. And, if that's the case, you're thinking, what will everybody say? But I really want to stop this. I'm so overwhelmed. That's a whole different story. But if you're going after something you love and it is working, but you have doubts or you're going through a rough patch, keep going if that's what you want to do. Don't give up on yourself. But, really take care of yourself the best you can with what is meaningful to you in your life and balance that with practicality. Because we can't all just go after passions and, but give your life as much meaning as you can. And if you do have the resources and you're just scared or stuck, take the risk.
It's not a race. You're not running a race.
Yes.
We all have, our own timelines and we don't have to rush through anything.
Yeah.
Take the time.
Yeah. Yes. And I know the reason you're doing this series of moms who have started businesses or entrepreneurs, for whatever reason, whether it came from their own children having needs or just wherever they are in their lives. I think there are so many moms and women that do have a desire to do something outside of motherhood and are scared. And again, it's not about having a neurodivergent kid or a neurotypical kid. It's just that self-doubt and the fear of taking the risk of trying something new, or the what if I fail, I'll look stupid, what will people say? Even if it's not just to start a business, but switch jobs, switch careers, or use your creativity. If you love to paint, to let people know you do that, or put yourself out there by entering a little art contest, all these things that women are afraid to take risks on. Could use that encouragement, because it can be uncomfortable to take the risk, but then, you get on the other side and it feels really good. Really good.
And I think if we kind of circle back to the trauma, all of us have, a lot of us have some kind of trauma. I mean, we can probably pinpoint at some point in our life, right? Mm-hmm. And, my thought is always that trauma or that pain or struggle, we can turn that into our power. Mm-hmm. Once we recognize it, realize it. Yep. And that might be something that we can look at as moms. And I look back at my career and thinking everything I've done is because I've either screwed up somewhere, mm-hmm. or I've experienced it and it was really, really hard to get through. I got through it. So now I'm, reaching out to others or using that, in my own business.
Yeah.
So I found that too.
Yeah.
That if we just look at our struggles and look at them as, maybe that pain we can turn into our power.
Absolutely.
We know it well, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And as the great Brene Brown has taught all of us, it's vulnerability. Mm-hmm. It is that it's the fear of failing that keep people afraid of trying.
Yeah.
And you do have to say, okay, if I fail, I fail. At least I tried. Mm-hmm. Or if you fail at a small part, just one part of a bigger thing you're trying to do, everybody fails. Like, keep going, right? Just keep going, because you don't have to stop because you screwed one part up. It's okay. And so many people feel like they're the only one while everybody else is successful, and really everybody's failing all the time. It's inevitable as humans. So it's so important to teach the kids too. It's another concept that I realize parents, and I'm trying to incorporate it more into therapy, into the kids I do still work with, that it's okay to fail. It doesn't mean don't try. It doesn't mean don't make the effort. And it's different than everybody makes mistakes, right? Like, there's the perfectionism thing and being afraid of making a mistake, and my homework has to be perfect. Not that, just the fear of failure, and go for it anyway. And if you do fail, you will survive. But it's very daunting. And I just wish this is another thing. I think kids should be told this. Love yourself, be your own friend, and it's okay to fail. If you do, you'll pick up the pieces and you'll figure it out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's tough. Like with teenagers, you're dealing with the teenager first, and then if there is a neurodiverse aspect to this person, then you're dealing with that second, right? And my grandson's 13. He lives with me, and so I'm raising him. He is autistic, and he is funny because he's such a teenager most of the time. But then I have to remember that some of his dysregulation and sensory issues, are beyond that.
Yeah.
But I try to tell him, when you fear something or you feel like failure, if it's a bad feeling, then that is your red flag to pay attention to it. Like, what is this? And that is telling you to move away from it. How are you going to move away from it?
Right.
So you fail? Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But you know what? Take that and look at it and say, well, that's not what I want. That's why it's happening, because that's not what I want. So I need to go in a different direction.
Right.
And then that'll take you that sidestep or whatever.
Yes.
And then, hopefully move forward.
Yeah. Because it does. That's why they say one door closes, another opens.
Yeah.
That risk you take, even if you fail, may set you on this other path, alternate path that you wouldn't have gone on if you didn't try the first thing and fail. Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you look at it as positive.
Yeah. Yes. But, and it's true. I think it's so much about fear and risk taking.
Oh, totally. Especially us, these side gigs or businesses that it's very risky.
Yeah.
But it's fun. It's fun, moms. It really is. It's a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. And it's cool. It's kind of like, I didn't picture myself doing this. This was not my plan at all. I'm just going to be a regular occupational therapist. And, so while we do live in our own heads and doubt ourselves and all the ups and downs that come with running a business and taking the risk of being an entrepreneur and pivoting even within that, it's really cool. It's another way to also give yourself some kindness and like, you know what, this is cool. You're doing this and good for you. Like it is scary at times and all of that, but it feels good. And I think you have to love it, right? We've both said in this conversation, what do you want or what is meaningful? So this is not for somebody who is, I'm sitting here telling people to take risks, but like, it's a certain kind of person. I guess I'm trying to say, if you don't feel it naturally in your gut, not just the entrepreneurship, but what I think it matters more. What is your passion or your interest or your business idea? If that isn't really meaningful to you, it's going to be really hard to ride those waves of uncertainty and ups and downs that come with running a business, if that makes sense, right?
Great advice. Yes, great advice, because you don't want to force it. You know, it has to feel natural. It has to be, you have to connect to it, and you don't have to make it this big, huge business. It could be something small on the side that you're having fun with, and maybe it'll just make you some money on the side. But, you know, take the risk that you feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yep, absolutely.
Definitely. So I think we got maybe off track a little bit, and that's okay, because that's why we're here.
Shocking, Tara. You and me.
I know. You know what?
Maria, we're doing pretty good overall.
I think so. I think we are. Basically, yeah. So I want to go back to the coaching business a little bit. So in your coaching practice, and this is a question that I'd like to know too.
Yeah.
In your coaching practice, do you find that there are common misconceptions or myths about self-care and regulation in parenting that you maybe have to address?
Yeah. Oh, yes. As I mentioned briefly before we started today, that I had a conversation last night. I didn't tell you the story yet, though. I just mentioned that
you just started, right?
Just last night in one of my groups, that a couple moms and I had this conversation. And this time it wasn't me bringing up self-care. One of the moms did, and she was saying how she feels like society's always throwing this word around, like everybody should have more self-care, but that if you're kind of pushed to be told what that means, that's not really, it's almost like the opposite of self-care. And just her point, I think, was like her sister, she said, is always saying to her, you need more self-care. And she wears like a self-care t-shirt. And meanwhile, this mom was saying, like, I work it in the way that works for me. Like your version of it may be going to the gym or going out and getting your hair done or whatever. And that's fine. My version is finding little moments of joy in my day. She's like really just, and it's she didn't realize it, but she was describing mindfulness too, like really enjoying a cup of coffee, taking in the taste, the smell, that kind of thing. So that was her example. But I noticed in that conversation, she also said, because, we need self-care as moms because we're always doing all the things. And sometimes when we need a break, we don't get it. And it would be nice if our families noticed. And I said, well, do you ever ask your husband for help? And you could see the light come on because she's a real high achiever. And it never even occurred to her. It did not occur to her because she, while many women may not ask for help because they're people pleasing, right? That's a different thing. In this case, this mom has she's a supervisor at work. She manages 48 people. She's got 3 kids, and she's a go-getter. So she mentioned her pride, right? And it was, I can do it all. Kind of not so much the I need to be a superhero, but pride in I can make it work. I've always made things work. I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. Let me just take these teeny breaks or moments of joy in my day. And I know she goes running and she's doing this group, so like I told her, so you're doing self-care right now. But again, these are things people don't think of when they think of self-care and self-regulation. People tend to think of going to the gym or going to the salon, and all of that is true. It's so important to look at your own life and the context of your home, the supports you have, and make sure you're utilizing them in the best way that can support you. And do some reflection too. Is it my own pride or ego in the way of why I won't ask for help? Is it people pleasing? I'm afraid to disappoint if somebody asks me to do something that I know I don't have time for, and I say yes anyway. All of those things go into our self-regulation. Self-care goes into self-regulation because, like we were saying earlier, if you don't get any, you're pouring and pouring and pouring from an emptier and emptier cup, and you're going to run out eventually.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah.
So true and so powerful. Such a powerful thought. And I think that it's a great way to kind of leave off for today. I hope that we can get together again because there's going to be so much. Oh my gosh, this is going to be so much. But I think, I want to thank you so much for opening up and, just like letting our moms see or hear you, the real you, and some of your passions and your background, is amazing. And moms don't always have to have this tremendous background to start something. But there isn't enough, like you said, there isn't enough of this, of just the teaching people what I think of as like just being humane.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I hear in everything you're saying is just kind of like, just be humane, to yourself and to other people. And, remember that. And remember that relationships are huge because we have relationships everywhere, at work, school, home, with our spouses, with our children, with our friends, with our family. It's all about relationships. Also, to think about that. So I don't know. There are a lot of takeaways, and I'm not going to like go over everything, but a lot of takeaways, and I can't wait to listen to this again. Actually, it's going to be fun.
Well, I could talk to you for hours, and I would just add, anybody sitting there listening who, if starting a business or taking that kind of risk is not on your plate, but you are isolated, you don't have to join a coaching group. Like if that's not in your financial resources, or you don't have the network you would like to have socially, or you just moved to a new town and you don't have friends yet, take one little step. Anything. Ask the mother of a kid in your kids' class to go for coffee, which also can be uncomfortable. We could do a whole other episode on that kind of risk taking.
Right.
But, if you're feeling isolated and disconnected as a person, take some kind of step towards getting some connection, whatever that looks like. Calling an old friend and going out when you haven't been out, getting that cup of coffee with somebody new. Do anything that just brings you closer, because if you just wait and wait and wait, you're going to feel worse, and it's amazing what just being around other people can do for the soul and your self-regulation, and just, bring you a little bit of joy and take you out of that isolation.
Definitely. Yeah. Awesome advice. Thank you. Thank you, Maria. Yeah. Well, it was great having you here today, and I'm glad you got to see, the cottage here at A Child's Light. It's pretty cool, isn't it?
It's beautiful. Yeah. I love it. I love it.
So glad to have you, and we'll get together again.
For sure.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Tara.
You're welcome.